Hey everyone, and welcome back to week 3 of the webinar series, ReWild and Maximize Life. I'm your host, Sven Kron, and today we're going to dissect yet another part of health and nutrition, and we are actually going over how you can make yourself healthier through your nutrition. So if you've missed the past 2 weeks, that's totally fine. You can go back and rewatch them at rewildyourhealth.com/replay. And I really encourage you to do that. The first week, we really talked about how to evaluate where your diet is right now. We also talked about how to really break down what your goals are and what you want to eat. And then last week we talked about what good food is, what good sources of food are, where you can find them, and how you can incorporate them into your diet. And this week, we're actually going to go over, yet another aspect of nutrition. We're going to talk about how to add things into your diet and how to get rid of the food that is bad that is currently in your diet. So if you really enjoy these, make sure you tune in. I'm going to have one of these webinars every Saturday in May and June. And let's go ahead and jump right in, and we'll start breaking down this particular section of ReWild and Maximize Life. Okay, so again, this is week 3 of ReWild and Maximize Life, brought to you by ReWild Your Health. This whole series has been brought to you by CrossFit Stanton. They are, they're really great. Very helpful with the community, and if you are having trouble deciding where your fitness is, they're really good at meeting you where you are and trying to get you to the point where you want to go. I've really enjoyed, out of all the places that I've gone to work out, I've really enjoyed them the most. You can go check them out. Their website is there at the bottom. It's crossfitstanton.com. You can go check them out on like Facebook and Instagram at CrossFit Stanton. Yeah, definitely go check them out. And thanks again to these guys for hosting these webinars. So today we are, breaking down the 7 steps that you need to correct, balance, and maximize your nutrition. This week is replace what you eat. Step number 3. So, what I like to say, and I say this, every time, the birthright for every human is to be able to adapt and thrive in any environment. And I really like thinking this way because, you have a certain potential as a human being, and this potential is very rarely ever met by people because of how they live their lives. And so my goal is to really show you how you can live and how you're able to thrive in your environment, how to build your life around what you want. So before we continue, again, I want to make sure that you've gotten your downloads. This came with 2 totally free downloads that I just want you to have for pure information. The first one is mine. It's called the 7 Steps to Correct, Balance, and Maximize Your Nutrition. This is the cheat sheet that I had that we're actually breaking down. This webinar series is going through each of the 7 steps so that you know what to do and how to do it. And it touches on how you can take your health into your own hands, how you can be sovereign with your health. And you and anybody else can get a free copy of this by texting the word ReWild to 44222. The second download is actually from Briar Acalia, my partner. It's called ReWild Your Diet. It's the 13 Ancestral Nutrition Tips. This is Briar's guide to having a great nutrition. It's very similar to this webinar, but hers goes much, much more in depth on very specific topics. She's got 13 things that she talks about in there. It's definitely a resource for you to have and to check out. And you can actually download this just right below this video by going and clicking the giant green button. So you are definitely in the right place if you love to learn about health and nutrition. And, of course, that's what I like to do. So I assume everybody does. But if you have ever struggled to be healthy in the past, if you've ever been overweight, sick, or unhappy, unhealthy in any way, um, or if you have a loved one who is unhealthy and you weren't sure where to start looking, you weren't sure what to do, you weren't sure how to help them, you are in the right place. I can definitely show you how to do all of that. So what you'll learn today is, the healthy and unhealthy foods. We're going to talk about that just a little bit, but for more information about that, definitely check out one of the past webinars. We're going to talk about how to replace the unhealthy foods in your diet. You also need to make sure that you add in the good quality foods that you're not getting and that you're not getting. We all have these, and I like to think of my diet especially as being a spectrum. So I'm trying to always get it exactly where I want it to go. And of course, there is a too far, and then there's a not far enough. And so this is really a good way to start at the very beginning and to get where you want to be. The real point of today that you will learn is how to make your diet bulletproof. So what I want you to do is, if you have any kind of questions at all, and you want to talk about this in any way, just use this hashtag. It's hashtag ReWild Your Health. You can use it on Twitter or wherever, and I'll be happy to answer any kind of questions that you have. I'll go further in depth with anything that you need. I'll try to point you in the right direction. I just want you to be able to have the information yourself, and I want you to be able to understand really what's going on. So this is my Twitter handle here, and a little bit about me. My name is Sven Kron. This is a picture of me here. I'm hanging off a cliff. It's hard to tell, but it was a fun position. We had a snowstorm. I live here in Virginia this past year, and so we got some snow, and it was all the way up to my knees. But this is me in the top right with my daughter and her little buddy. His name is Giraffe. Her name's Riley. And this is my wife, Briar. She's the one who's downloaded. Hopefully you've gotten down below. And what I am is I'm the creator of ReWild Your Health. I've studied nutrition for years. To really get to this point, I've tried to completely break everything down and assimilate it myself. I have a real interest in figuring out nuances and little tiny aspects of health that everybody else really misses and overlooks. The field of nutrition is such a wide-ranging field, and it's really hard to find relevant information about it. Strange as that is, you would think with so much information you'd find tons of stuff, but it's actually the opposite. There's put the picture in there because it's me studying the nutrition of that river. So, again, I decipher tons of information, and it's because I love to learn about health, nutrition, fitness, ancestral life, any of that kind of stuff. I love learning about, and that's what I seek out. That's what I go and read and talk about in my spare time. I listen to tons of podcasts, read blogs, books, conferences, online conferences, courses, online courses, seminars, coaching, documentaries. I do all of this stuff, and I've done this for years and years to really get this information. And I'm trying to find a way to bring you the relevant nutrition information for you. I don't want this to just be like broad strokes. This isn't relevant to everybody. I want it to be specific to you. So these are the kind of people that I follow. On the top left here is Daniel Vitalis. He's really the creator of this ReWild movement, and he's a really big inspiration to me and person that I get my information from. The top right is Ben Greenfield. He has a website where he has tons of information about fitness and nutrition. He goes really in depth about all of that, and he's another great source. And then at the bottom is Sean Stevenson. All these people have podcasts and blogs and stuff, and they put out information for you to really get the information you want. And these are definitely good places to start. I think that all of them can be very relevant. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to deliver everything to you so that you can really be the one to assimilate everything. So my goal is to distill this information for you. So I want to take everything out there and bring it into one small, tiny, bite-sized portion for you to really understand and implement. And I want for you to be able to incorporate it into your diet. So last week was when I really talked about my whole story. I talked about coming from childhood as an overweight child. I was always overweight throughout my whole life. I tried to do everything I could to lose weight, and it was always an uphill battle, and I was never really able to succeed. So I'll just give you the short version. In school, I actually weighed more than I do now. I weighed probably 260 at my heaviest, and that was in like 10th grade. I worked out, but of course, I saw no results. I saw no weight loss. I was just doing what I thought I was supposed to do, cardio and I played sports. So just doing random stuff in the gym with the other guys. And it wasn't until I came across veganism that really opened my eyes that nutrition has an effect on your body. And that led me into every diet you can imagine. And it's really been a lifelong quest through my genome. It's really been a strange path for me to discover how my genes really affect who I am. And, that's one thing that I really want for you to understand, that everybody told me it was my genes and I couldn't do it. I couldn't lose weight. I just got some bad genes, but that's not true. And I don't want you to think it's true. I want you to be fully aware that you can change what genes are expressed. So you can actually create the health that you want. But again, today is totally about you. It's not about me. I just wanted to give you a quick overview about me. So how do we know where to start? So I want you to focus on your diet. That's what I do. I want to make sure you know what I mean by diet. So I think that it's a very convoluted term nowadays. The word diet is very overused today, and it has lost its original meaning. It's not something that you eat over a short term to get an effect. If you say I'm on the Atkins diet, that's not the proper use of the term. I mean, in modern day, we've adopted that term, but that is not what the word diet really means. So whenever I refer to diet, I want you to think of this. So the word, by definition, is what a person or a species, habitually eats over an extended period of time to sustain itself. So what a diet is it's something that a population or an individual will eat. And it doesn't have to be one specific thing. It doesn't have to be low carb or high fat or something like that. It doesn't have to be any of that kind of stuff. It's just the food that a person eats. And usually it's determined by their environment. It's determined by the season, the time of year, even the time of day. That's what the true definition of a diet is. And so this is what the standard American diet is. This is what people are eating nowadays. You see pizza and fried chicken and, there's Chinese food, McDonald's, potato chips, drinks, and that's, of course, that is not the diet. That is not a good diet. That is not something that you want to habitually sustain yourself with. And I want to reinforce that what I'm talking about today is not a diet. I'm not trying to push a diet onto you. I'm trying to show you what the true meaning of the word diet is and what the diet of your human, of what you, the individual, is. So you really don't have to jump to eating, like the perfect foods right away. That's one thing that people really, they, I guess, become afraid that they're going to have to give up a ton of stuff to get to where they want. And I mean, yes, it's true, but it's not true in the same way that people think. And I don't want you to think that you just have to jump there right away. You have to start from, eating McDonald's, going all the way to being completely clean eating, that's not the case, and I don't want to give you that impression. I want to make sure that you know that this is a gradual thing, and it is very easy to do if you do it the right way. You have to approach it from the right mindset, and I'm going to talk about mindset later, and you have to approach it with the knowledge and the gumption behind it to really make it sustainable and truly effective. So I want you to do this on your own terms. I don't want you to do it because anybody else really thinks you should do it. I want you to do it because you think you should do it. There is really, to do this whole thing, there's only one simple step. And I'm going to give you that step here in this next slide. I don't want you to get really confused and be like, oh man, let me quick get my notebook here and take notes. It's not something super complicated. And really the fact that it's simple illustrates the fact that it is a true sustainable habit. Add in good foods. So that's all you've really got to do to get the diet that you want. If you want to go from eating the standard American diet to eating fruits and vegetables and good quality meat, good quality water, everything, all you have to do is add it in. I don't want you to get discouraged by having to eliminate foods. That's something that I really struggle with. When I was first trying to figure out how to lose weight, it was like, man, I've got to get rid of this. I've got to get rid of this. I can't eat this anymore. I can't drink this. I can't do this. I can't do that. And that's what I really focused on. And that's bad. That's why it might have worked for a little bit at first, but it was not sustainable. It was not something I could do long term. And it was because I was focusing on eliminating. And I don't want you to fight your genetics. You've evolved a certain way. You've got certain base needs. You've got certain, like pathways in your brain that elicit certain responses. So whenever you think that you have to do something really specific that goes against your genes, then that's not going to help you. You're going to be fighting an uphill battle, and yeah, you may be able to fight it for a while, but that's why so many people just have like pure cheat days where they just eat whatever they want because they can't fight it anymore. They know that once they go past that week, 2 weeks, they start having so much trouble. And so they just build it into the system, which, I mean, that's perfectly fine. If that works for you, that's good. I've done that in the past, but I want you to understand why you react this way. And it's really an easy process to add in good foods. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to, involve tons of, like traveling around and getting crazy, kinds of stuff and spending tons of money. It's not like that. It is super easy, super simple, very straightforward, very easy to follow. So I'm sure you're asking, how can I do this? How can I get to the point where I'm eating the diet that I want? And one of the hardest things for me to do is to look into the future and imagine the small steps that it takes for me to get there. I'm really good at envisioning where I want to be, and I'm really good at knowing where I'm at now. So like if I say right now I eat, McDonald's 5 times a week, how can I get to the point where I don't even want McDonald's? I know there's going to be a point in the future where I don't want McDonald's anymore, but how do I get there? How can I do that? And, that's, it's really a change in your mindset to get there. So a couple things I want you to keep in mind is to not pressure yourself. Again, your mindset has probably just as much to do with your diet as the actual physical process of eating and finding food. So I do not want you to pressure yourself. There's no pressure in doing this. And you need to keep your focus away from deprivation. You don't want to be eliminating foods all the time. And that should not be your focus, because really that'll never work. Again, it can be a very short thing that you can try to do. It can last for, probably years. People can probably do it for years, but your body's going to eventually get to a point where it's going to make up for all of that. So if you force yourself to lose 20 pounds and you keep it off for a year, after that year, if you've been focusing on depriving yourself, then your body's going to force you to gain the weight. And, that sounds really strange. It sounds like, you have low will or something, or you're just being overindulgent. No, that's not true. Your body is making you do it. Like you get to a point where it's almost like a learned helplessness from your body. You do it and you don't know why you do it, but you do. So Do not pressure yourself. I want to break this down a little bit more. This causes stress. It releases cortisol. And when you put pressure on yourself, especially when you feel guilt or shame or, stress, like any of this kind of stuff, it's going to have physiological effects on you. And it can be, very benign effects in the beginning, but it can lead to such huge things. You could have a ton more inflammation, which can cause disease. You can have weight gain, nutrient malabsorption, which causes deficiencies. So you won't even be able to digest food. If they found that if you're actually under stress, it can destroy the gut bacteria that you have in your intestines. So you can't digest the food that you eat. So having stress can actually be a huge burden. And you know what? If you decide one day on your way home that you want to stop and you want to get something from McDonald's, like, you know what? That's totally fine. It's your choice. You should enjoy it. You should not say, I'm such a bad person for doing this. Why am I so terrible at reaching my goals? You shouldn't put all of that burden on you. That's going to make it worse in the end. You should just accept the fact that you did it and get back on track. So keeping the focus away from deprivation. This is the other point I wanted to really talk about. So when you say, I want to not eat ice cream, the way that your brain works is that if you want to not eat ice cream, first, your brain thinks about ice cream, and then it's like, oh, I can't eat that. So every time you're trying to fight this, every time you see ice cream, you're like, man, I can't eat it. You're depriving yourself. And every time you think about it, it's like your mind goes there, and then it's like, I can't eat it. So you're holding yourself back. You're really burning through your willpower, and it uses huge amounts of will, and it'll cause you to break. It can't be a sustainable effort if you do that, because again, first you have to think about it, and then you have to think about not doing it. So it's like automatically depriving yourself. There've been lots of really famous studies. One was on this topic of deprivation, was that researchers, they had some chimpanzees, and they found that if they gave each chimpanzee one banana, then they were really happy, and they just enjoyed the banana and they ate it. But if the researchers gave the chimpanzees two bananas and then took one away, then they were mad and they didn't want it, and they would like throw it and stuff, and humans are the same way. It's still netted in the same one banana, but from one mindset, it was a positive thing, and from the other mindset, it was a negative thing. So you just need to be aware that you have this tendency, and you need to make sure that you don't do it. So willpower has bigger power than you think, much bigger. People think they can fight their willpower, or they're just being weak or overindulgent or something like that, and it's not the case. It's not true. It is in your genes. And your willpower, yeah, it's something that you can work over time, and it gets stronger each time you work it, but it is so difficult to do. And if you think you're going to go from 0 to 100 in the beginning, you're not. You just have to accept that and figure out ways to stack the deck in your favor. So that's another thing I want to reemphasize. It's better to allocate your will elsewhere. So this is why I suggest you add in the foods so that you don't even have a difficult choice to make, stack the deck in your favor. I want you to add in the foods so that you don't focus on eliminating foods that you don't want. And at a point when you add in all of the foods that you want, you're going to have so many good foods in your diet that you're not going to be wanting the bad foods. If you gorge yourself on traditional diet foods, if you gorge yourself on wild foods, there will be a point where you don't want this other food. You start to realize, like, man, it was messing with my happiness. It was messing with my energy levels. It gave me acne. It gave me stomach aches. I don't want it anymore. There was no point for me to have it. I don't know what was so enthralling about it, but I don't want it anymore. And you'll get to that point. So please just stack the deck in your favor. So I'm going to give you an example. And this is an example that comes straight from me. I've got a picture here. I want you to just take a look at the picture. This was actually my dinner. It was my wife, daughter, and I's dinner. We went camping one day, and this is what we had. we had hot dogs, potatoes, onions, some greens, and mushrooms. And so this example is showing you how you can add in and how you can find good sources of foods so that you can eat the foods that you want still, but you start adding in the other foods that are good. So remember, the focus is on adding in good sources instead of restricting the bad sources. So I just have this picture here. It's two examples of salmon. The left one is a farm-raised salmon. You can tell it's not quite as good as the one on the right. That's a wild-caught salmon. So the one on the right is the good source. The one on the left is a bad source. So instead of saying like, oh man, I can't eat farm-raised salmon anymore, like, no, just start adding in the wild-caught salmon. If you really like certain things, just keep it in there and add in the good quality foods on top. So hot dogs, that was an example. I didn't restrict hot dogs, but what I did is I found a good source. The source I had was a local, it was pastured, grass-fed version. The picture here is from the sign out front where the farm is. It's called Polyface Farms. They were actually the ones that were featured in The Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan and Food Inc., which was also a Michael Pollan documentary. They happen to be local for us, and they have all of their meats that they grow right here at the farm. So what they do is all their cows are pastured, all their pigs are pastured, and they take all the meats and they make hot dogs out of them. They actually sell Polyface hot dogs, and I know that it's a really good source. I know that it's going to be much, much better quality than I can get in the store. It's probably going to be a better quality hot dog than a steak I can get at the store. So I'm happy with that, and I didn't restrict it. So from my perspective, I'm still getting what I want, and I'm not having to really fight for it. I'm not having to focus on doing something or getting rid of something bad. I'm just thinking about the foods that I have now, and I'm enjoying them. So the potato was next. This was really one of the trade-offs. We had gotten conventional sweet potatoes. They aren't organic, but sweet potatoes are ones that are a little less pesticide laden. That's why I chose this one as the trade-off instead of going for the organic sweet potatoes. If I wanted to save some money, I got the conventional sweet potatoes. And I chose to have the sweet potato over another high-carb food, such as like a pasta. It would have been super easy to just make pasta, put it in a container, and take it camping with us, but we didn't want to do that. So what we did is we just got a good quality sweet potato, and we brought it with us. And it's totally fine that if you don't get everything completely organic, there are some things you should really focus on getting organic, but sweet potato is one that it was fine for me to have it as a trade-off. So the onions, I actually ate wild onions. They were growing right around our campsite, so they were freshly foraged. They probably weren't even dead yet. They were probably still alive when we were cooking them. So they had a much higher nutrition value than store-bought onions. Store-bought onions are probably, weeks to months old by the time they get to the store, and they have lost a lot of the nutritional density by then. The fact that they're bred means they're not as concentrated with the phytonutrients that are bioavailable in regular, just wild onions. So that was one thing I was really proud of eating, and it was free. It tasted good. They were just right there. It was super simple to do. You just grab some, pull some up, and I threw them in there. Made little chips with the stalks, and then I ate the bulbs. So the greens, again, it was another one. They were wild greens. They're much more nutritious and tasty than store-bought greens. They were free and easy to get. So the thing I think about here is when I think about store-bought greens, of course, I think about like kale. Kale is, fairly bitter, but it's actually really crunchy and thick. And, it's the texture is not what's appetizing to me. So then I also think about iceberg lettuce and, like green leaf lettuce and all of those really bred lettuces and cabbages and stuff like that. And they don't really have much of a flavor. They've got a little better texture to them, at least from our perspective, but they have no flavor. So what we ended up doing with this dinner is we picked on top here some plantain. Um, the the plantain is a very common, they probably call it an invasive weed, but it has a fairly mild taste. It's not too crunchy, and when we cooked it again, it totally tasted fine. It made like little chips. I'm a really big fan of eating kale chips. Um, but yeah, plantains on top, and on the bottom is the clover. That's clover that's been seeded. It's the same as the little, 3-leaf clovers you find on the ground. That stuff's everywhere. Another invasive weed, and it's actually a really sweet, mild, like milky kind of flavor, and that's totally something that you can add in. And again, these were free. These were close by, and I just grabbed them and threw them in and cooked them and made them. And mushrooms. So I could have gotten mushrooms from the store. A lot of times we do, but actually at this particular point, we had found a mushroom a little earlier that particular week, and we had identified it. It was a really big mushroom. And we cooked it. It was like eating a burger. It was really meaty, kind of fleshy consistency, and that's really good with mushrooms. So again, hot dogs, sweet potatoes, greens, onions, and mushrooms. And what again, all I did was I added in the stuff that was good. I didn't have to think about eliminating anything, and I just wanted to replace a couple things with a little better quality food that I had available to me at the time. So it was a really good dinner, and it was super easy. It wasn't challenging. I didn't feel deprived. I still felt full at the end, and I was really happy with it. That's an example of what you can do. So that's a sample of how to add in good foods. That's a way that you can actually figure out how you can go about doing this with your own foods, with all of the different meals that you eat. There's ways you can do this. There's ways that you can find a better source, or add in a good quality. So I want to re-emphasize about your genes is that your genes have been programmed to find sugars. Carbs are, or I guess sugars are a type of carbohydrate. So when I say sugars here, I'm meaning like fruit sugars and stuff like that. But you actually, you're programmed to seek them out because they're not all that common. Certain times a year, they're very common. And, some things like tubers, like potatoes, you can find usually most of the year. They are, everything is seasonal, but you really have to search them out. And then those take a lot of processing to get. So when you're fighting your genes here, you're fighting your ancestral memory. You're fighting the way that you've evolved. You're fighting the way that your ancestors would have done things, so it doesn't feel natural. So it's very difficult. It is. It's really almost impossible, and I want you to really think about that. That it is impossible to try to fight your genes. So you shouldn't. You should embrace them. You should be like, thank you for trying to find sugars for me. I actually have all of the carbohydrates that I want right here. So there are easy ways to get around it. This is not a way to get around it. I don't want you to say I can't. So whenever you get into that mode, you will feel deprived. You'll get that feeling of deprivation, and you'll go into the mode of can't. So instead of telling yourself, I can't have that, that's the same as saying, I'm going to not eat ice cream. You need to tell yourself that you can have it, but you aren't the type of person that eats that food, If you do have a problem with something like ice cream or pizza, say, yes, I can go eat that pizza if I want. It's not going to make me feel good. It's not going to be the type of thing that I want, that I'm looking for. And I'm not the kind of person that eats that food. And that is going to sound very foreign at first. You're going to think, like, who am I kidding? Of course I want it. But the more that you do this, the stronger that this muscle kind of gets. The better you'll become at this too. So you need to do other things to start associating yourself, associating your personality and your actual avatar of yourself. You associate that away from bad food. So if you hang out with a certain crowd, people at work that always want to go out to eat at, bad places, then associate yourself with a different crowd who want to eat healthy and they go train on their lunches. There's ways that you can do this, and it shows people that, wow, you really aren't that kind of person. So then those choices truly become invalid in your eyes. So you react like this to sugar because you've got hunter-gatherer genes. Humans evolved to be in situations where you're always seeking food. Hunter-gatherers, they never gathered more food than they needed, and they always ate everything they had. They never stressed about what they ate, and the only stress in their lives was very infrequent. It was always running from danger, or if they were doing some kind of nomadic thing where they were moving around. It was stressful to move stuff around, but that's all the stress they had to worry about. They didn't have to worry about all this other crazy stuff that was going on. And you've got these genes inside of you. So you really need to embrace that and realize this is what they do. So maybe I should start taking this approach when I'm eating things. So you should apply these principles to modern life. I don't want you to just kind of learn about these and be like, oh yeah, that's cool. I guess I was a hunter-gatherer at some point. No, like the whole point of all of this is to apply it to modern day life. It's one thing to learn. It's a different thing to actually act. And what I'm asking you to do is to act on this, to take all of these and to apply it to your life. So this information is here to inform you about the tactics that you can use in your life. And, again, it's just how you would have evolved. This is how I live my life. When you live your life closer to the way that you would have evolved, you start to become healthier, and you start to make your environment the way that you want it. You start envisioning what you want. And again, you just have to live like the way that you have evolved. So again, this is totally an example off the top of my head. If you grew up in a place that ate tons of seafood, all your life you ate seafood, but then when you got older, you moved to the mountains and you didn't eat as much and you started to feel worse, then you'd probably be like, oh, right, when I grew up, I ate a ton of seafood, so maybe I should just eat some seafood again. And then you'd start feeling better after you did that. That's just an example, but that's how you need to live your life. So let me give you a few more examples here on how you can try to incorporate this into your life, into your modern day life. So other options that you have is, if you make bread, can you find a local source? Can you find a miller close by, a stone grinder, and get the flour? Can you find somebody who grows the flour themselves and bring it to you? Can you find one person who grows the flour and a different person who mills the flour? If you can get something like this, then it's going to make your bread so much better. You're going to enjoy it so much better. It's going to taste a lot better, and it's going to be a lot healthier. It's going to have so many more nutrients, enzymes. It's going to just be a better quality. And that's an easy way. You don't actually have to do anything. It's just supplementing what you already are eating. It's almost like taking a multivitamin without having to take it. It's just completely easy to do. Another example would be, if you eat conventional meat, can you find a local farm? Can you get a good quality meat? Like even at your local grocer, they're starting to carry better quality meats. And they're seeing that health is moving in this field, in this direction. So they're trying to accommodate you also. That is an easy thing to make a step, that you can supplement your meals without even worrying about how you need to change your diet, because it's just automatic. It's part of your everyday life. So one of the tools that I use the most, and you can use this to find local food, Google. Google can be your biggest help. Like really, you can find most of the things that you want on Google. So how do I find it? This is one thing that I get asked a decent amount. How do I find food like this? Like I talk about, I actually got some einkorn wheat, which is a very old variety of wheat. It was actually one of the ones that humans had evolved with, and it was what we made our bread out of. And people were asking me where I had gotten it, and I actually just Googled it. I found it online and I bought it. I researched a couple of them and I bought it. So what kind of stuff do I need to look for? So these are some things that you can plug into Google, and you can do this anywhere you are because these places are popping up. Farmers markets, there's farmers markets everywhere. I used to live in Virginia Beach, which is a big city, and there's a place where there was a farmers market every day of the year. There was a farmers market. And I could go anytime and shop. Of course, if you live farther out in the middle of nowhere, most places are actually having farmers markets. Then that's almost where the food is grown, so that's just as good. There are farmers markets in New York City. There's farmers markets in DC and LA. That's where the food movement is going. So you'll be able to find them more, and you'll find better quality foods there, even if all you need to pick up is, like here, just some cabbages and apples and squash. If that's all you need to get, and you could get it from your grocery store, get it from the farmer's market. It's going to be a lot more nutrient dense. It's going to taste a lot better, and you don't have to do anything special. It's like adding it in on top, but you don't actually have to do anything actively to change it. So another thing for you to search for, it's local farms. Local farms would be the places that grow the food. A lot of places actually offer times where you can come and buy food from them. So, this is also seasonal. Polyface sells most of the year. They're open at least one day of the year, or one day of the week, all year round. And we can go buy our meat anytime. They have different options. They sell at farmers markets. They sell in restaurants. They sell in small stores. They sell everywhere. But if you drive around the back roads here, you'll see a lot of people that just have signs up that say, eggs, $2.50, or like, we've got vegetables, stop in between 8 and 2. A lot of places are doing that, and you can just go to the farm that grows it itself. That's going to be a lot better. Even like realistically, even if you are trying to buy organic food in your local grocery store, as long as you can find a quality that is just as good in a local farm, that's going to be a lot better nutrition. It's going to have more of the nutrients that you want. Community supported agriculture, that's places where you actually talk to the people who grow your food. You pay for it all at the beginning of the season, and they give it to you throughout the season. That's definitely something to look forward. It's a lot cheaper. Local butchers, a lot of them, they'll have hunters that bring in meat that only want certain like back straps or something, and then they've got all the extra meat, and they'll sell it to you. It's a good place to get bones if you're wanting to make bone broth. It is definitely the place to go. Butchers, and they're all nice and friendly and helpful. I put co-ops on here, and that's a good place because most of the time they have local food. If you don't have a farmer's market close by, or if it's on a day that you can't make it, or at a time you can't make it, then go to your co-op, because probably all of the farms who are selling food to the farmers markets also have it at the co-op. And it's the same with small grocery stores. There's a lot of health food stores that do that. Whole Foods is even starting to do that. If you go to CrossFit boxes, like CrossFit Stanton does that kind of stuff. They set up CSAs. They help you with meat shares through Polyface. CrossFit boxes are a really good place because the culture is around nutrition and fitness. So in the end, what it has to do is it has to work for you. So the best diet for you is the one that you get results with and that you can stick to in the long term. It's not, one specific diet that you can never stick to, that you can only do for a month at a time. That's not the right diet. The diet that is right for you is the one that you can stick to. All right, so I've got one thing left that you should try that will benefit you right now. So I want you to try to find a local source of at least one food, just one food that you eat now this particular week, and that you can replace with a better quality food. So I want you to try to find the hot dogs in your diet, and find a local farm that makes hot dogs from Better Foods. I want you to do that with one food. All right, I'm going to give you another bonus, okay? I want you to add in one food that you should eat but you're having a hard time doing it. So one thing that I actually have more of a difficulty with is eating a lot of vegetables. You know, I I can eat, meat all day long, and my genes do come from a place that were predominantly meat and dairy eaters, but I have a hard time eating vegetables, so that's just, added in. One day a week, cook some vegetables and just throw it in there with your hot dogs, get it all out of the way in one meal. But that's all you've got to do. Just one this week. And, use the hashtag #ReWildYourHealth and tell me what it was. This again is a spectrum, so it's what you're always going to be moving towards. So don't focus on trying to do everything right now. Make sure that it is something that can be sustainable, that you'll do over the course of your life. It'll take you months to get to a good place, and that's all you've got to do. Once you get there, then it'll be a healthy way of being there. You'll be happy that you're there. It's not going to be like you forced yourself and now you're going to break. That's not how you have to do it. And if you do have any kind of troubles with this stuff, remember, ask me questions. Use this hashtag to ask me questions when you're outside of the webinars. So hashtag #ReWildYourHealth. I want you to use me as a resource. I want you to be able to have your questions answered. If you're having trouble, I'll be glad to help you out. I've been there. Again, I've done every kind of diet imaginable, and I've been really searching for the way to do this very easily, very simply. And that's what I'm trying to give you in this particular webinar. I want you to have specific things that you can do. So I just want to say nutrition is awesome. I love nutrition. I love talking about it. I could do it all day long. So it can really be the doorway to the life you want to live. And that's one thing I really want you to think about with nutrition. You can have the health you want, you can have the body you want, and the energy you want from the nutrition that you eat, from adding in these foods, and from changing the foods you're eating now to a better quality. Everything gets better when you have better health. And once you get it, it's really not as confusing as it seems at first glance. It's really easy for me to stand up here and tell you this, but trust me, after my years and years of really trying to figure out what it is that I want to eat, this is the best route for you to really make a lasting change in your diet. So until you get your nutrition right, nothing is going to change. And of course, this is also true with the field of health. So until you get your health right, nothing is going to change. And it'll help you throughout different aspects of your life. I have several businesses that I'm trying to run, and when I have better health, I can run them better. And I see that I can think better. I have more energy. I can focus better. I come up with better ideas when I have better nutrition and better health. So this is the right place to start your nutrition. This is the right place if you want to make a change in your diet. This is the right way to go. And I wish that I had had all this information when I was first starting out. I wish there was someone who could show me these things. But sadly, there wasn't, and I want you to have the opportunity to be shown the right way, so that way you can be even farther than me. So, this still seems daunting, and I do understand that. I hear it a lot too. And trust me, it was really daunting for me when I first started. So, one of the things I want you to do, really take advantage of these webinars. They're all free, and you will learn a ton of information. If you actually tune in and watch all of these webinars, you will be in the top % of educated people in this field. You will be at the top. You will understand more than the vast majority of people in this field. So focus on adding in good quality foods. That's a good way to move the needle in the right direction. That's what I want you to do. You focus on one a week. If you can do 2 a week, then that's good. But just focus on adding in good quality foods so that you can get there. Another one of my favorite quotes is, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Don't say, man, if I had started this last year, I would be so much farther along. I'd be where I want to be. Yeah, that's great. That's probably true. But that didn't happen. So don't linger on it. Think about it like man, think of what it's going to be like in a year. Think of how I'm going to feel in a year. Think of what I'm going to be like in a year. Um, so that way, when a year passes, instead of saying, I wish I would have started this last year, you can say, thank you. I'm glad that I'm here and I did it all myself. So I want you to ask me questions and I will, of course, be happy to answer. But like if things still seem confusing, look, there's a couple ways that you can really do it. You can put in the time and study everything you can get your hands on. Nutrition is a really big field. You can wade through all of the false promises and diet fads out there to find something that works specifically for you, or you can tap into my years of research and investigation to quickly and easily get your specific meal plan with no headaches or confusion. I'm really trying to show you that I'm going to be there for you. I'm going to be able to help you. You're really on the right track. You're in the right place. Um, things aren't going to be as hard as you think they are. You just have to understand. You have to be willing to accept the ideas, and you've got to be willing to ask the questions. So the fastest path to having a healthy nutrition, having a healthy life, having the life you want, the fastest path is to rewild your health. So one of the tenets that I really think about is everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler. I personally enjoy going super in depth and learning as much as I can, but in a topic like this, I want you to really understand it. I want it to be as simple as possible. It's not going to be so simple that you won't, it'll be just something you could guess yourself. No, I want you to be able to understand everything, and that's what you'll be able to do. So what is Rewild Your Health? That this is really what you'll be able to change your diet with. It's the complete step-by-step program to correct, balance, and maximize your nutrition. This is the simple to fast route to getting better health. So it is the absolute fastest way to get from point A to point B. I say it's step by step, and that means that each step is laid out for you. There's no confusion or misunderstandings, and you will end with a plan specific to your goals. It's not like you're just going to kind of get to a point of being healthy someday. You will define it. It'll be based on your goals, and you will completely understand it. It's a difference between getting there with this, broken down car that you don't even think is going to start, and getting there with the new Tesla Model 3. It'll be the fastest, the easiest, the most healthful, efficient way to get there. So what is it exactly? It's a 12-module course, and it starts where your diet is now and gets you to your diet goals. It doesn't start you at some, specific place in the future that you think you'll be, but it starts where you are right now. If you're on the couch eating Pizza Hut, it starts with you on the couch. So there's no ambiguity. Everything is laid out. It's simple to understand, and it's intuitive. It is the exact path that I've honed over the course of years and more than 10,000 hours of study and ongoing study. It's probably closer to 20 or 30,000. I obsess about it all the time, and I'm bringing it to you. So what are the 12 modules? The first one is, what does health even mean? It's the internal and external factors that can change your health. You will go farther in depth about this topic than you have in any of the webinars. You'll discover how all of these factors can be your downfall or how they can be your strength, and how to start your personalized plan. So what should you feed a human in a zoo? It's how you should eat and what your genes are telling you. Find out how humans have evolved, and really that'll surprise you. How diets can differ, how they can cause different levels of health too. How you can become the healthiest version of yourself, how you can become the best version of yourself, and how you can apply these lessons to modern day life. Module 3 is the easy way to find plants. It's the steps to sourcing the best food in the world. And you'll learn why sourcing your food can automatically create the life you want. We touched on this, getting good quality foods, and it'll be automatic. You'll get specific instructions from me on how and where to find this food and to find it cheaply. This includes more than plants. It includes bacteria, fungi, and protists. And these are the superfoods that you never hear about, that nobody ever talks about. The easier way to find meat is module number 4, the process of acquiring better meat for less money. Learn why it's important to really find the quality meat that you deserve, and where you should put your money. That's one thing that I really want to focus on in finding meat, is how you can relieve the burden placed on your wallet, because it doesn't have to be as expensive as everybody says it is. So module 5 is raise your sources to the next level. These are the 5 steps you need to get the quality you deserve. Learn these 5 steps from getting way better food than you can get from the store. And no one tells you this. You don't hear about this anywhere. You can save even more money doing this, by the way. So level 6 is level up your life. Level 6, module 6 is level up your life. It's the 5.5 foods that will change your life. These are the true superfoods that only the top nutritionists even know about, let alone talk about. Just this section can give you the life you want. The extra half, 5.5 foods, is the cherry on top. It includes the best way to get the most nutrition from your foods. Module number 7 is the number 23. Why this number makes you do everything. All right, I'll let you in on the secret. This one's about genes. You've got 23 chromosomes, pairs of chromosomes. So discover information on the cutting edge of the field of nutrigenomics, probably a field you've never heard of. It's the science of how your diet affects your genes. We talked a little bit about this in the last webinar, and go check that out. But this goes far more in depth. And you learn why your DNA is set in stone, but your genes can change throughout your life. Throughout the day, they can change. Module number 8, the cake is a lie, why you slip up and why it's okay. This is from Portal for all you nerds out there. So understand how to deal with stress and setbacks. It's the psychology of eating. Learn why you can cheat and how to stay on track, and create your mindset to achieve your goals. And this can help with all aspects of your life. It can help with your business. It can help with your relationships, everything. Module 9 is the nutrition of water, how just one thing can make up 99% of your molecules. You are 70% water by volume, but by molecule, you are 99% water. So find out how you can be made from the purest substance on earth. You won't get this anywhere else. You'll get made of the substance that has not seen the light of day for thousands of years, since before we started agriculture. Learn that not all water is created equal, and you need to source your water like you would source your food. Module 10 is what goes beyond nutrition. It's the 7 techniques to get more out of your food. Why these 7 techniques should be taught as a kid, and they will make all the difference for your food. So you need to master the art of eating and cooking, and you master that just from watching me. It's not difficult. Module 11 is your specialized health plan. It's the plan that best fits your life, and it's made by you. Become the architect of your life. By this point, you will have made your own personalized health plan. You will do it all by yourself. This takes into account everything from your goals to your genes. It's not going to be something simple that you just kind of pick from. This is going to be made by you, for you. And module number 12 is, now that you know everything, what next? How your knowledge can expand and where to go from here. You'll not need my help by this point to make your nutrition decisions. You'll be just as much of an expert as I am. This is also where you can go to keep learning, and where I go to keep learning. It's his tactics for telling whether information you come across is true, how to vet it. So how much will it cost me? Well, of course, I said you can spend 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 hours to learn and decipher everything like I did. You could hire a personal coach probably for $15,000 or maybe even more. You could pay thousands and thousands of dollars trying to find something that might work. And that's the path that I took. I don't want you to do that. So it won't cost you thousands. And I'm giving everyone a pre-launch discount. So you will pay half of the launch price. You can get started for just $250 right now today. And you can do that by clicking on the link below. This is going to be a limited time thing. Once I launch, the price is instantly going to go up to the normal price, which is twice this. And look, I'm bringing it back in here, for everybody who's out there in email land. I want to reemphasize what you get with this. You get absolutely everything in the course. I want you to have as many resources as possible. Your very own copy of your health plan comes with this. Your copy of a food journal, a recipe book, and a course book. You get access to tons of videos, plus you get audio, PDFs, video, and way more downloads of your course, so that you can learn it whenever you want, wherever you want, without having to have internet. Some of the free bonuses that actually come with this, you get access to an exclusive Facebook group for you to have support, and you can ask questions from me in there. I'll have weekly Q&A calls where I answer your questions, where I specifically answer the questions that you ask from this Facebook group, and questions that I get emailed. Your course planner, which will help you keep you on track. It'll help you traverse the course so that you can get the most out of it. Plus, you'll get my awesome tools guide, which is exactly what I use for making all of my food. Plus, you get 60-day money back guarantee. So that means you get 12 epic modules for success. You get your personalized health plan. You get a food, mood, poop journal. You get a recipe book with pictures, a complete course book, tons of awesome videos. You get audio, video, and text downloads. You get exclusive Facebook page access, weekly Q&A calls for your questions, the course planner for success, the awesome tools guide, a 60-day money back guarantee, plus you get lifetime access to all of this stuff. This isn't just a year. This isn't a membership site. You get access to everything. And trust me, the price is going to go up after this. It's going to go up after I launch too. So this is really a steal right now. So all you've got to do is visit course.rewildyourhealth.com/presale. So you can also click the link below. It'll take you to this website. And trust me, you really need to just go ahead and check this out. Go visit that page. I've got all the information on that page. I've got everything broken down. I went into way more detail on that page than I did just here going through these slides, because there's just so much information. I can't give you all of the knowledge. That would be a completely separate webinar, and I've broken it down on that page. It's totally free for you to go look at. So just go to course.rewildyourhealth.com/presale. So what I really want to do. What I really want to do is I want to present something for you so that you can truly have the health that you deserve. I appreciate you tuning in here, and this is the right place. Make sure you tune in next week for the free webinar that I'm going to be doing next week. You can see at the very beginning of this slide deck the different steps. I'm going to break it down, and whenever you text ReWild to 44222, you'll get my cheat sheet, and you can see all the weeks. That's what I'm going through. I'm going from 1 to 7. I'm going to break down everything week by week, webinar by webinar. And I want to thank again, CrossFit Stanton. If you've got any questions for me, make sure that you go follow me on Twitter and use the hashtag and ask any kind of questions that you want, and I'll be happy to answer. So if you have any other kinds of difficulties, make sure you tell me about them. This week I want you to find one food that you can add into your diet that you don't have now, and I also want you to find one food that you can find a better source of that can help you get to the health goals that you want and that you have set for yourself. And I want you to really focus on these things. Just start with these one foods, do 2 if you can, but it's really a simple process, and it doesn't have to be as complicated as everybody says it is. And thank you again for joining me. My name is Fen Cron. If you have any kinds of questions, please go ask, and I guess I'll see you next week. Hopefully you'll be able to catch up on the replays, to really get the information that you've missed if this is your first one, but you are in the right spot, and I'm glad to be able to take you there. Thank you.